You never know until you try. That's the mantra that Sam Manicom has lived by ever since he was a teenager. At 16, he decided to ride a bicycle all over the European continent, which planted the travel bug firmly in his mind. That bicycle trip eventually led to an 8-year motorcycle odyssey, literally around the world, from Africa to Australia, Southeast Asia, South and North America, and really Sam hasn't stopped traveling since. He really only got off the bike to write about his experiences. He's got 4 books documenting his travels, or audiobooks if you like, as well as 2 other compilations of stories from like-minded travel friends he's met along the way. The coolest part about Sam is that he's happy to share everything he's learned throughout his travels, speaking at events all over the place, joining up with Horizons Unlimited, and jumping on a few podcasts as well. But Sam's secret to successful traveling isn't really a secret. A handshake, a smile, and a respectful hello in someone's native language can get you into or out of almost any situation you'd encounter. This is Sam Manicom. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. All right, Sam Manicom, you are on Driven to Ride. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Mark. And actually, I've got a thank you to do for 2 people, haven't I? Not only to you for inviting me, but also to Mark Novak for getting in touch and saying, Sam should be with you guys.
Yeah, he's a big fan. He lives in the same neighborhood as me, actually. He has worked on a couple of my cars, so he's awesome. Got to go on a couple of rides with him, too. Hope to go on more this year.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, he's a great guy and big fan of the show, so he'll be, to use an English word, I think he'll be quite chuffed that he got a shout out, so.
He will indeed, and he probably already knows what the word chuffed means because I use it quite a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a great word. It's I hope it crosses the Atlantic a little bit more. So, but yeah, let's talk about you. You've got I would say a hell of a story, but it's a hell of a collection of stories, really, because you're a full-time adventure traveler. Is that what most people would know you for? Can you maybe share what your maybe claim or claims to fame in your case would be in your own words?
I don't know about claim to fame. What am I most known for? I suppose the 8-year journey I was lucky enough to make around the world on a motorcycle, and also for the 4 books that I subsequently wrote about that journey. Each book takes the reader through a different section of the journey because 8 years, there's just so much that happens. It was impossible to put it in one book. Yeah, also for the Moment Collectors books. These books are collections with 20 chapters, and each chapter is by a different travel writer. Some of these guys are really well-known authors, and others are writing for the first time. And they're collections. The theme of all of those stories is one of those moments where they're out on the road and they're just thinking, yes, this is why I'm out here. They've come together beautifully. It's a privilege to be involved with all of the authors. So, yeah, I guess those 3 things as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, as modest as you make it sound, it's pretty epic of a time. I think a lot of people have like some adventure travel in their bucket list and would love to go to some places or whatever. And obviously, maybe we won't get everywhere that we ever want to go, but circling the world over 8 years is pretty epic. So I'm kind of stoked to dive into this and hear about as much as I can and learn about the books and everything that you've got going on. But I want to kind of start at the beginning. How did you even get into motorcycling in the first place?
Beer.
Oh, really? Okay. That's a good mix.
So my first solo trip was when I was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. Up until that time, my bicycles had been made up of bits that I dragged out of the local river and canal, and I cleaned them up, and that was my means of transport. Mm-hmm. But I was doing a paper round and odd jobs and things like that, and eventually had enough money to buy a brand new bicycle. And this one had 3 speeds, which I was absolutely delighted about because where I was living in Sussex is in the UK at the time was pretty hilly, so 3 speeds, that was a bonus. But anyway, yeah. I looked at this bicycle and I just thought, what am I going to do with you other than write to school and do my paper round on it? Mm-hmm. And my childish mind popped up with, I'm going to ride into Europe and see how far I can get. But I had no idea of the enormity of what I decided that I was going to do. Of course, the first section was persuading my parents that it was a really good idea that their 16-year-old son was going to set off and ride a bicycle in Europe.
Yeah.
But they were incredibly supportive. I think once they'd got over the initial shock, my mother was, yeah, go for it. And my father was, God, this could be a disaster in the making. But yeah, if you don't try it, you won't find out. And that was one of the best things about that trip. It was learning that if you don't try something, you never find out if you can. And that was just one of the lessons of that trip. And it's stood with me ever since. Absolute bonus, isn't it? Because, yeah, you don't always succeed with the things that you do. But if you don't try, you never find out if you have got the skill, talent, luck, or whatever else is involved. So anyway, after that, I did various trips, backpacking. I hitchhiked around Europe for a year and a half.
Okay.
And that was big trucks. Because
like semis and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because I reckoned the view from up there was going to be fantastic. But also, these guys were going to be going to places where a normal backpacker and hitchhiker just wasn't going to get to. So into various shipping yards and things like that.
Yeah.
Which was, a fascinating underbelly, if you're with me, to the world that I was hitchhiking through. At various other trips, I bussed and trained and hitchhiked some more, and had a beat-up old Holden station wagon in Australia for a while, and so on and so on. But I listened to my mother eventually, who was saying to me, "Don't you think it's time to grow up?" Well, she was probably right. So I tried the career lark. And,
okay, sure.
Yeah, I was quite good at it, to my surprise. One of the things that traveling so much had taught me was how to look after people. And that I was in retail management, and selling isn't dragging people's wallets out of their pockets and making them buy something. It's a case of, well, what does a person need? Have you got something that they need? And if you have, well, then just tell them about it in such a way that will be of interest to them. And, I just had a lot of fun because it was helping people. But after a number of years doing that, I started to get horribly itchy feet. And the beer came in because one night I was in the pub after work and just sit and have a few solo beers. And after the first couple, I started thinking about life, the world, and everything. And it dawned on me that actually I didn't like my job anymore. And the next beer was, well, okay, so you don't like your job. What are you going to do? The next beer was, hang on a minute. You don't owe anybody any money. You've got no responsibilities at all. Your family well, no kids, no pets, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Do something different. And then the next beer was, well, what are you going to do? Well, this time I think I'd had about 7 pints.
Yeah.
And I sort of slurred to myself, I'm going to ride a motorcycle through Africa.
Oh, wow.
That was literally where the plan came together. Sitting, drinking too much in the pub.
Well, I think there's been a lot of great and also probably a lot of terrible ideas thanks to beer. But this is obviously a life-changing, fantastic idea. But had you obviously you've been a travel kind of person. You've been a traveler kind of your whole life, it sounds like, and always kind of had that travel itch, which I can relate to a fair bit. But what made you decide on a motorcycle? Had you ever ridden a motorcycle before? Was it just that's a hell of a commitment to travel through Africa, but to do it on a motorcycle is a whole nother ball game.
To my amazement, during my my drunken state, I was actually thinking quite logically. And the thought process was, pick holes with every other way that you've traveled and think about the things that you didn't like. And find a way to travel that is going to tick all of those boxes in a positive way. So, for example, sailing. I love sailing, but I also really like people. And except for when you're in the harbours and ports and so on, you're not meeting that many people. I liked hitchhiking very much, but then after 12-hour stint standing by the side of the road and not going anywhere in the rain, there's got to be a better way of doing things.
Sure.
Bicycle riding, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But riding for hour after hour into a headwind and not going anywhere particularly quickly, yeah, okay, there's got to be a better way to do it. And so that was literally how I sort of went through all of the other ways that I traveled. And the motorcycling popped up as being a way to deal with all of the things. I suppose there was also a little bit of, I'd been banned from riding motorcycles by my parents when I was young, which is probably very wise of them. So there was a little bit of a naughty sparkle over, well, actually, I'm a grown-up now. I can do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we can bicycle through the mainland of Europe, but riding a motorcycle, that's where we draw the line.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you like when you first got a bike and first threw a leg over it? I mean, were you hooked from the start?
I bought a little Kawasaki KDX 125 to learn to ride on.
Mm-hmm.
I had one lesson to teach me how to change gears, and the rest of it I self-taught because I reckoned that all the money that I would be spending on lessons would be gas money on the way down through Africa,
Yeah.
which was not a sensible decision. That was one of the bad ones. I should have had more common sense at that stage. But I think when I first climbed on the 125, I was afraid of it.
Mm.
By the time I passed my test, I was enjoying myself on it. When I went on to the BMW R80 GS, which was about 3 times its weight, then I started to feel afraid again. And I spent the first weeks riding through France and down into Italy, feeling more like some sort of motorcycling accessory hanging on the back of the bike, trying not to fall off it, than I did being the person who was in control. Unfortunately, the R80 GS was a very, very kind bike to a novice. And so long as I didn't try to do something that stretched too hard, then it would sort of plod along and, let me know if it wasn't happy with something that I was doing. Yeah, it did throw me on the deck a couple of times.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of grew into it almost. It wasn't like an instant thing.
It wasn't. And sort of heading straight down into Africa, my mother says that I have a strong streak of stupidity. And sometimes that's really, really helpful because it encourages you to do things that perhaps you ought not to. Just because, well, if you don't try. But it was, I guess, about 6 months, 5 months-ish going down through Africa. And I got to Kenya. And one day, it suddenly dawned on me as I was riding that I wasn't afraid of dirt roads anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the moment when I also realized that I wasn't having to think to tell the bike what to do. We were just doing things instinctively together.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment onwards, I started to smile big time because they're milestones, aren't they? Really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when that fear goes away, or that kind of, I'd say like the front part of your brain where it's like warning you of all the danger or anything like that, and you kind of you get into a groove and you know the bike that well and all that. Yeah, that's kind of that zen state that you can get into.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to ride with respect, don't you?
Sure. Yeah.
But you're not riding with fear first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're focused more on like what's ahead of you rather than like how to manipulate the motorcycle or what I'm going to do in this situation. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So riding from the UK to Africa, through Europe, which had to have been, I mean, just beautiful to go through continental Europe and then all the way down into Italy. And how did you take like a ferry then from Italy or mainland Europe to Africa?
Ferries. I managed to make an awful lot of ferry crews laugh on the first section of the trip because I was ridiculously overloaded. And this is February in Europe, so it was bitterly cold.
Oh, geez.
And
okay,
I had so much stuff because I reckoned, well, what you don't know how to do, then you can compensate with by having the right equipment to do it when you find yourself in the situation. So there was a lot of logic in it, but it was completely ridiculous. And I was just making myself a much more difficult ride and putting the bike under a lot more stress. So it was a small ferry from mainland UK to mainland Europe, and then another ferry from Italy across to Greece. And then back then, there was a ferry that ran from the port of Athens, which is a city called Piraeus, and that ran across to Alexandria in Greece. Sadly, it doesn't run anymore. But it was an absolutely fantastic way to get off. But I surprised myself when I rolled onto that. I got horribly lost. Most of the street signs were in Greek. And if you've ever looked at anything written in Greek, then, you know where that the jokey phrase comes from.
I was going to say, there's a reason why people say it's all Greek to me.
Exactly. So I rolled into the ports with just minutes literally to go before getting onto this ferry, which is a big ship. But fortunately, the customs and immigration officers were really kind to me. I actually knew a bit of Greek because I'd spent some summer seasons working in Greece.
Oh, okay.
I think that because I was making a bit of an effort to talk to them in Greek, they sort of took me under their wing and hustled me through. But when I managed to get onto the ship, and it's just absolutely huge stern to this ship. If you think about a 5 or 6 story building, that was about the size of the rear entrance into this ship with multiple layers for vehicles. And I found 50 motorcycles on this ship. And I was so surprised because I thought I was doing something unusual.
Sure.
But it turned out that there was only one other motorcycle that was going further than Egypt. So I felt a little bit more comfortable that I was doing something odd.
Yeah, not the only guy with the idea, but definitely in the minority to do what you're doing. So, had you planned out the whole route beforehand, or I mean, did you kind of have a rough idea? What was kind of that planning stage, at least for the route, like?
I had some mishaps with the whole planning stage. I gave myself some time pressure, in part that there's only a certain amount of time when you can logically cross the Sahara, when it's cool enough for you to do it. So the clock was ticking on me from that point of view. I had originally wanted to go down the west side of Africa because I was born and initially brought up in the Congo in Central West Africa.
Sure.
And I wanted to go back, see what it was like. But everything, just as I passed my test, so 6 weeks into my prep, everything went pear-shaped in Algeria, and all the borders in Northwest Africa closed, and nobody could tell me how long it was going to be before they opened up. And I had this weather clock ticking on me. And I just thought, well, okay, you've done almost no prep at all, but try the east side. Maybe you can get down that way. And what I didn't realize at that stage was that nobody had done it for 20 years because of the civil war in Ethiopia and in southern Sudan. But, this is pre-internet days. So in one way, that's really kind to you because you sort of head out not knowing that there are barriers and you just deal with them as you go. So as far as prep is concerned, the countries that I was planning to ride through down the eastern side, I found out what the length of the visas were, whether the visas started when they were issued to me or whether they started as I rolled across the border into the country, and what the weather patterns were going to be like. I also tried to find out what the political situation was going to be like in those countries because, of course, if you're riding into an election period in some of the countries there, you've got to be wide awake, and perhaps it's better to ride through the country next door, not the most logical on your route. So I learned those sorts of things, but it was very, very basic. I did learn a little bit about the customs and the cultures of the countries because I'm just curious anyway. If I'm going to be riding through somebody's home country, then I want to know something about the people that I'm going to be linking up with, understand them. It's too easy, isn't it, to tread your cultural motorcycle boots over somebody else's home territory and not realize that you're making massive blunders.
Yeah, it's kind of that distinction between tourist and traveler, I think. There's where you're just going as a tourist, maybe to see the sights, but traveler, I feel like they want to get into the culture a little bit and learn about how other people live.
Oh, totally. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So going down the east coast of Africa, I don't want to glaze over anything or whatever, but this trip to Africa sort of grew into this out of control 8-year odyssey. Was there a point in that Africa trip that you're like, I'm just going to keep going? Or was that maybe at the end of the trip? I mean, like, what flipped the switch in your head to be like, I'm just going to keep going?
Okay. I am a bit of a disaster magnet.
Okay.
So things kind of find me to go wrong. And during the first 9 months of the trip, I was arrested a couple of times, thrown in jail, shot at a few times, and various other mishaps. But every time something went wrong, something fantastic happened as a direct result. A place that I went, or places that I went that I would never have gone to, and they were just absolute gems, or people that I met that were absolutely fascinating. So it taught me that when things go wrong, it's not a disaster unless you make it into one. Actually, it's an unexpected adventure. What's the worst that can happen to you? Well, you can die. And if you're dead, well, then you're not going to be aware of anything anyway. So
got nothing to worry about. Yeah.
Exactly. Use some common sense and don't get yourself in those situations on purpose. But if you find yourself in one, then think your way through it and enjoy what is a silver lining. So I got down to Zimbabwe, which is about 3/4 of the way down, maybe a little bit more than that. And I had just fallen in love with riding a motorcycle and the freedom it was giving me, and what a wonderful icebreaker it was. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, I think. You stop, and people who love motorcycles or want to ride a bike or whose father or grandfather rode a bike or whatever, they come across and talk. And you've instantly got something in common. And I was loving this aspect. The conversations that I was having with strangers that started with your bike, absolutely brilliant. And the freedom the bike was giving me to make up days as I went was also a complete bonus. In other words, I didn't have a bus train ticket or a train ticket, so I didn't have to go anywhere. I could wake up in the morning and think, this place is awesome. Let's stay for another couple of days. Or that side turning looks really interesting. Let's go and see what's down there. And this is one of the reasons that it took me 8 years to get around the world, because I just, side turnings rock. There's so much fascination down there and so many tales of the unexpected. They're brilliant. And so by the time I got to Zimbabwe, I discovered all of these things, and I was just thinking, what an awesome way to travel on a motorcycle. But then I started thinking, but you're supposed to go home and start a new career, and
yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I could not find a good reason to do that. But I could find lots of good reasons to keep on traveling. And, the beauty was being on a motorcycle meant that I was wild camping a lot, even in Africa.
Oh, sure.
And that meant that I still had a big wedge of money left. And because I was mostly off the beaten track, I was going through small villages and small towns, and the prices were low. And if I ate what the locals ate in the markets and things like that, and bought from the local supermarkets, I still had a good wedge of money left by the time I got down to Zimbabwe, and I just thought, stuff it, I'm not going home. This is too much fun.
Yeah. Let's see how far I can take this cash with me.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes when you're traveling, you just get strokes of luck, don't you? And afterwards, you just think, how was I fortunate enough for that to happen? And the stroke of luck that I had at that particular moment was getting in touch with a cargo shipping company who took passengers. And when I spoke to them, they said, yeah, sure, we've got cabins free, and it'll cost you X. And, oh, you got a motorcycle? Yeah, sure, no problem. Just go up on deck. So that was me. I booked a passage on a cargo ship, a container ship, to go from Durban in South Africa across to Sydney in Australia. And,
wow.
So the next 3 months, I now had a ship clock ticking on me, not a weather clock.
Man, so that's got to be a long journey in and of itself to go from Africa to Australia. You don't have to go north to south, but that's got to be a long Western trip.
It was absolutely brilliant. It was a wonderful way to leave a continent like Africa, because it wasn't instant. When you get on a plane,
right?
You buckle yourself into a seat, and 15 minutes later, you're gone.
Yeah, you're in the metal tube, and you're 45,000 feet in the air or something, and you're in your own world. Yeah.
But on a ship, standing on the railings, on the stern, just watching Africa recede into the distance, and you can smell the change. You can smell the land, and then that changes slowly into the sea. And the color of the water when you're close to land, because there's a big river, then the seawater is fairly muddy in color, but slowly you filter out into the azures and turquoises and so on. And my mind was just full of the adventures that had been happening for the last year. So it was an absolutely super way to leave.
Yeah, kind of a really like reflective breathing moment, it sounds like, where you're able to, like you said, kind of reflect on everything from the past year, kind of think about what's ahead and just enjoy the journey.
No, absolutely. And, this cargo ship was good fun anyway, because it was at a time where passengers could go anywhere. So you could even go down into the big engine rooms, and these engine
Oh,
rooms are
geez. Okay. Yeah.
massive, and the smell and the sound and everything else, just phenomenal. And I had
Yeah.
never dreamt I would do something like that. So that was really special. But these ships, they're so big, they basically plow through these massive waves. But when you're sort of standing on the dockside and you're looking up at a ship like this, it's massive, it's huge.
Mhm.
But when you're in a foresight gale, it's tiny.
It's interesting. I mean, just hearing you talk about some of these adventures and stuff, and I have to imagine in some of these moments you did have some fear, but you look back on everything very positively, which is super cool. Over the course of your trip, at least we'll go through Africa and Australia. Did you find that like any fears or maybe insecurities or any worries that you had kind of subsided after, I don't know, maybe getting arrested, getting shot at, and did you find yourself maybe becoming like more calm?
This is going to sound quite weird,
Okay.
but even now, so right the way through the trip until even now, it still bothers me that I'm going to do something stupid in front of somebody else, such as drop my bike in front of a crowd. And I've done it so many
Interesting.
times, and I
Right,
should
right.
know better. And it just shouldn't bother me,
Mhm.
but it still does.
Sure.
Those sorts of things bothered me more. I found during the course of this journey that a handshake and a smile and a hello in somebody's language gets you through an awful lot of situations, a lot of very difficult situations. You show respect to people, and they'll be gobsmacked to begin with, and
Mhm.
then they just sort of tentatively smile back, and then all of a sudden, so many issues just melt away.
Hmm.
And it was such a good lesson to learn that.
Who'd have thunk some kindness and some friendliness can go a long way
Sure.
anywhere in the world, right?
Oh, absolutely right. And it doesn't matter what development a country is in, whether it's third world development stage or first world. That handshake and a smile, respect, it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, going back to kind of the 8 year odyssey, went from Australia. Where did you head after Australia?
Up into Southeast Asia,
Okay.
so Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, a little bit of Burma,
Hmm.
as it was called then, and
Right.
then back down into Malaysia and across then into India, Nepal, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, and then through Eastern Europe. For me, it's the most colourful and culturally diverse part of the world that I've been to. It
Hmm.
really is one of those parts of the world where when you cross a border, so much changes. It's
Really?
the clothes change, the vehicles change, the smells of the food change, the language change, of course, etc., etc. The sound of laughter doesn't change, though.
I love that. I love that. That's super cool. So Southeast Asia, did you end the trip there, or did you come over to North America, South America after that?
Well, during this time, I met a German girl,
Okay.
and she was riding a bicycle through New Zealand. And I wasn't looking for a girlfriend, and she certainly was not looking for a guy like me. But
Hmm.
you know what it's like. You click
Sure.
sometimes, and we just got on wonderfully well. And we decided that she would come out to join me on the back of the bike in Nepal because she wasn't a motorcycle traveler.
Hmm.
Um, did she enjoy traveling by motorcycles, and did we enjoy each other's company when we were with each other 24 hours a day? It was a really good test, and we got on like a house on fire. And so I said to her, look, I'm going to South America. Would
Okay.
you like to come with me? And she
Wow.
said, well, yes, but on two conditions. I want to go to Africa first. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't mind going back to Africa. There's so much that I hadn't seen, and there are
Sure.
some magic spots that I thought I could show her.
Hmm.
And her next thought was, or condition, because it was a condition, um, I want to ride my own motorcycle.
All
And
right.
I said, well, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely get it. She's one of the most determined people that I've ever met. And
Hmm.
she actually did have a motorcycle license, but she'd only ridden a number of miles to pass her test. Very similar sort of situation, as in the rules were very basic to do. And that once she passed the test, well, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's all you need. Yeah.
she loves challenges.
Uh huh.
Um, but when we started riding together in Africa, she'd been riding a motorcycle for about 600 miles. So
Oh, geez.
my 3 months on a motorcycle was quite experienced in comparison.
Yeah, geez, and several thousand miles of mileage in Africa as well. So picked up a partner on the way. You went back to Africa.
Then across to South America. So we
Mhm.
were lucky enough to get a ship from Cape Town across to Buenos Aires in Argentina. And the two of us rode on from there down to Ushuaia and then up and across into Chile and headed up the west coast of South America.
Mhm.
Staying away from the coast as much as possible, funnily enough, because
Oh, really?
we loved the mountains. Um,
Okay.
it's just beautiful up there, drop dead gorgeous.
So then, correct me if I'm wrong. Went all the way up to North America, into the Pacific Northwest and into Canada, I believe.
We shipped the bikes from Colombia across to Panama by
Mhm.
air. This was the first time we put the bikes on planes, and so it was kind of fun to do it, even though it was just for a short distance, just because
Mhm.
it was new.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
but then spent 3 months traveling through Central America, which was nothing like enough. Fascinating place.
Sure.
But then up into Mexico, USA, Canada, and up towards Alaska. Then we dropped back down into the States and cut across to New York. And by the time we made it home, I'd been on the road for 8.5 years and Birgit for just over 4 years.
Man, that's so. I mean, like after like what 3 years, it's like, well, I'm just gonna keep going until I decide to be done, right? It's like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's just I'm just gonna keep going, which is it's very cool.
I think one of the things that helped is that we both knew how to travel cheaply.
Mm.
We knew that we didn't need loads of things to travel with. We needed to be
Hmm.
able to eat well and sleep well, and we needed to keep our bikes well maintained. I mean, in North America, we stayed in motels twice in 18 months,
Oh
and the
wow,
rest of the
okay.
time it was mostly wild camping or
Hmm.
little local campsites or staying on little town rodeo showgrounds and things like that,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was great because again we were off the beaten track a lot of the time and meeting local people. And that was just superb. But we also worked along the way for in chunks of the trip where we could, and we don't care what we do. So if we just have a go at anything. If somebody needed some help with something, then we'd help out for a few weeks, and then we'd travel on.
sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for taking me through the itinerary of the 8 year Odyssey. And the reason that I wanted you to do that is because you've written a couple books about your adventures, kind of divided up into chunks, which is fascinating to me. And I don't want to spoil anything in case people do want to read the books because I know there's loads of stuff. I know we just barely scratched the surface, but what made you want to write a book in the first place about it?
Do you know, when I did this trip, I had no intention to write a book at all. Um,
Yeah, you're just doing it just because you enjoy it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I wrote a journal every day because previous trips had taught me that when you're on intake overload, it's so easy to forget the things that matter. So how things sound or smell, or people's names, or the stories of people that you're meeting along the way, all of those sorts
Hmm.
of things. Because when you're doing any trip, you're busy focusing a lot of your energy and grey cell time on what happens next and how to do it and so on. And so
Sure.
those details disappear. So I wrote a journal every day. And when I got back from the trip, I'd written some magazine articles for a magazine in the UK. And the editor
Hmm.
got in touch with me and said, Sam, we're getting letters and emails from readers saying that they like your articles and they want to know when your book's coming out. Well, my attitude was, what book?
Yeah, seriously.
Um, but then I thought, well, if you don't try, you never find out if you can.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we'd got back from the trip and had found ourselves jobs renovating semi-derelict houses, which was a great job to have when you come back from being on the road.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, shower off all the brick and sawdust, and then sit down and just let the memories come flooding back. And um, I mean, it's quite a long process. It took me 2 years to write the first book, in
Okay.
part because it was at the end of working days, but also because when I finished the first manuscript, I went back through it and I pulled out of it only the things that I thought other people would be interested in. And that was quite a good exercise, and it was a good way of cutting it down. So, what stories are there other people going to be interested in? What mistakes that you write about are good mistakes to leave in the book because somebody else can think, oh, what an idiot. But now I know that I won't do it myself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
all of those sorts of things. So they're not guidebooks. They're just storytelling.
Yeah, and you've got, I think, 4 books that cover the main trip. But you released a book a couple years ago as well, just kind of a collection of stories and memories. Can you tell me about that book too?
This book came about because I was sitting down writing my 5th book, and I wasn't enjoying what I was doing.
Really? Okay.
I was sort of 5 chapters into it, and I was just thinking, well, if you're not enjoying doing it, life's too short. What are you going to do? And then it occurred to me that it would be great fun to put together a collection of stories. One of the things that all authors have a problem with, unless they're with mainstream publishers, is getting the word out about their books. And so I approached a bunch of already published authors and said, look, I'm going to put together a book called The Moment Collectors, because when we travel, that's what we do. We collect moments. Would you be prepared to write a chapter about this country and wrap it, the storytelling around one of those moments when you're on the road and you're thinking to yourself, this is just awesome. What a great place to be. This is why I'm out here. But every single one of those authors said, yeah, absolutely, delighted. And then I was watching quite a few people on Facebook. I like to watch other people's travels because to me, they're just fascinating. Every travel, every journey that anybody makes is unique.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was watching some of these guys and thinking, you're actually a really good storyteller and you've got a great story to tell. I don't know if you know how good you are. So I was writing to these guys and saying, would you like to do a chapter in the new book? And all of them said, oh, no, I couldn't do that. Me write a chapter in a book? No.
Yeah.
But I said to them, look, come on, have a go. Let's see if you can. So work with them a little bit. And I didn't have to work much with anybody. And we just put together this book called The Moment Collectors, 20 Travelers' Tales from Around the World. And people really liked it. I think in part because of the mix of storytelling styles, but also because they were being introduced into all sorts of different parts of the world. But I think also the key for me too was that they were being introduced to authors that they might not have come across before. So I had feedback from one guy who said to me, Sam, I still haven't finished reading The Moment Collectors. But every time I come across an author and I like his style, then I'm checking him out and buying and reading his books or her books. And then I'm coming back to The Moment Collectors. And I was sitting there with a tingle as I was reading this because, it's fun.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. You're kind of broadening everybody's horizons in what they should read or what stories they should get into, which I think is super cool.
It's what we motorcyclists do, isn't it? We find ways to share. To share our skills, our knowledge, our tools, whatever else it may be. And it just struck me that this was such a motorcycling thing to do, a real sharing way. People liked it, so then we had to go at doing The Moment Collectors Asia, which is 20 travelers' tales across the most diverse continent in the world.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And 2 things really I want to get to. I will get back to the books in a quick second, but
sure.
You mentioned something about being able to share knowledge, share stories, all that kind of stuff. That's something that you do quite a bit as well in going and speaking at meetups and conventions or anything like that. How did you kind of get into that world? Is that maybe just an evolution from writing the book and the books rather, and having people pay attention, or is it a Sam Manicom? I just rolled into this and started speaking at events.
The latter. I'm sure you've heard of Horizons Unlimited, and most of your listeners are going to as well. When we got back from the big trip and we were feeling decidedly round pegs trying to fit into the holes of society, and we didn't fit anymore, so a friend of ours said, have you heard of Horizons Unlimited? They're having an event up in the Midlands. Why didn't you go to it? And this was the second time Horizons Unlimited had ever done an event. So we rolled up to that and we're suddenly surrounded by kindred spirits. quite a few of whom we're still friends with now.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next years, we went to as many of those events as we possibly could. And eventually it starts being a case of, well, you do have a bit of knowledge. Why don't you share it? You know, what sums this up nicely for me is that one of the bits of feedback I had from my first book, Into Africa, was from a guy who sent me an email. And he said, Dear Sam, I read your book, Into Africa. I thought if an idiot like you could do this, so could I. And I'm sending you this from Nairobi. And I just thought, brilliant. That's what it's all about. Overlanders are not special people. They're just people who've been able to get everything together enough to be able to head out and do a big trip.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, the presentations are a way of sharing and encouraging people to think, well, actually, this sounds brilliant fun. Perhaps I could too. And actually, perhaps I should. So, yeah. And you can note that I'm saying that with a bit of a wicked grin.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, and you probably run across this more times than not, is it just people probably have a reservation about taking that first step or getting on the bike and really heading out. And once they do that, then it's momentum carrying you forward. It's getting over that inertia.
Yeah, it is. The hardest thing, I think, is making the decision that you are going to go. The second hardest thing is actually rolling your wheels, because then you've committed. And then it's the first 6 weeks. For me, it's the first 6 weeks, because you're still wrapped up with home and the speed with which we're all expected to do things in our worlds. Everything's got to be done yesterday and all the boxes have got to be ticked and all of the rest of it. So it takes me about 6 weeks before all of a sudden I realize, actually, no, I can stay here an extra day. Or it doesn't matter that I made an idiot of myself, except when it's in front of other people. And you sort of start chilling and taking side turnings and talking to strangers and all of those sorts of things. But those first three things, they're the most difficult. Once you've got through those, it's just fascinating every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, kind of going off that, being on your own speed is probably something that not a lot of people really, and whether that's riding the motorcycle or traveling fast or slow, however you want to do it, that's probably not something a lot of people really get to experience.
And the more people who do experience it, the better.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we're all individuals, and that's one of the beauties about motorcycling, isn't it? That we can be ourselves. We can sit down and think, what do I actually like? Why do I like riding a motorcycle? What are the things that I like doing? And then just sorting out future travels around those things. But of course, always keeping an open mind in case there's something that we haven't experienced before that's new and still slots into actually, I kind of like this.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like really the common thread is that kind of reflection of, what do I like to do? How do I get to the next thing that I want to do? And really just kind of enjoying the moment.
Too right.
Obviously in these talks, and you get quite a lot of emails and people reaching out asking for advice about traveling and the practicalities of it. Is there like a piece of advice that like you always want to give to people, but nobody necessarily asks about?
Every now and then, hide.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, when you're traveling, you're an intake overload. I mentioned that before. And in current times, we're under pressure to see and do things. I've heard them called Instagram moments.
Sure, yeah.
And I think because you're on intake overload, just naturally, because you're dealing with so much new, you can get to the stage where you start to become what I call travel blind. In other words, you start riding with the blinkers on, the blinders, and you stop seeing what's to the sides, and you start thinking more about making it to the destination instead of all of the things that you could get involved with along the way. And I think when you start to get that sensation, that's the time to say, I need to be in one place. I need to just spend a few days pottering around, wash clothes, walk everywhere, don't ride anywhere, just sit and talk to strangers, or read a really bad paperback book, whatever else it may be that is just available. So hide from the world just for a week or so, and let those pressures of what happens next get out of your system, because I think then you've recharged your batteries. And when you've recharged your batteries, then you go back out on the road full of curiosity again. And you're awake. So in other words, you can take advantage of opportunities, but you're also less likely to do things that will put you in danger because you're awake. So hiding away every now and then, taking a holiday from the road, I think it's an absolutely fabulous thing to do.
Yeah, it's like resetting a little bit, and just taking a moment to let your body and your mind process everything. Because I can imagine it's almost addictive, where it's like, okay, I saw this, now I need to see this and see this. And I think now probably one of the big changes I imagine you've seen from when you first took your trip to now is kind of like that collecting experiences, or the Instagram moments or whatever. Do you find that a lot of people are kind of chasing those things in travels, or are there still quite a lot of people that are kind of doing what I would maybe call the slow travel that you did?
I think it's a wonderful mix. And I'm
Okay.
saying wonderful because what matters to me is that people do travel. We live in an amazing world, absolutely amazing. And our media spends so much time telling us that it's a dangerous world out there. And sorry, it's bollocks.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
there are dodgy spots. Of course, there are places that you just don't want to go to. But every single one of our cities and our countries have got places that you don't want to go to on a Friday night in the dark and without a local, because you're opening yourself up to trouble. And that might be a tiny part of that city, and the rest of it is fascinating and interesting and fun. So why would you go to those dodgy spots? But what I'm trying to say is, of course, there are dodgy parts of the world, and they tend to be moving around all of the time. But the rest of it, just amazing. Incredible scenery, fascinating cultures, really friendly people who actually, they don't want to shoot you. They just want to make you welcome in their country and make sure that you have the best time possible. And that's the reality. And I think when people get out of their own countries and they go and travel, then they find this. And that's part of the addiction of travel. For me, it's a two thing. It's the riding the motorcycle, but all of those things too. I think there are an awful lot of people traveling around the world now who we never hear anything of. Perhaps you might find them on Horizons Unlimited because they've been there to ask a question. Does anybody have any experience of what to do in this situation? Those sorts of things. Some of them just very quietly share the experiences that they've had, knowing that the information that they're sharing might be helpful to other people. So there are lots of people who are just quietly getting on with it and having a blast. And there are other people who are just so full of the buzz of travel that they want to share as much as possible. And I think that, again, is one of the advantages of being motorcyclists. We can do our thing. There are some fascinating people out there traveling and sharing, and the stuff that they're sharing, just amazing photographs and really useful tips, wonderful stories about people that they've met and all of this sort of thing. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm coming down on those people, because I'm not at all. It takes an awful lot of time to do what they're doing well.
Sure. Well, while people are traveling, or maybe probably more while they're commuting, I was stoked to hear that your books are audiobooks now.
Yes.
And they're on Spotify. So I commute to work and stuff like that. And I've got about a 45 minute commute each way. And I was thinking about, okay, when I ride, I listen, commute, usually I listen to music or whatever. And I'm like, but I could listen to Sam's audiobooks while I'm riding to work and back, or driving to work and back, because it is January at the moment. But are the audiobooks a recent thing? Have they been around for a while? Tell me how you got into the audiobook thing.
As always, there's a story.
That's why I asked, man. That's why I asked.
So in the UK, the biggest motorcycle show is called Motorcycle Live. And it's a big indoor show. And I used to be there every year, book signing. And I'd spend sort of 15 minutes talking to somebody, and they'd be asking me all sorts of great questions.
Sure.
And of course, I'm paying for my pitch, by selling books. So eventually I'd get to would you like to buy a book? And to begin with, I was quite surprised when I had quite a lot of guys say to me, no, I can't read.
Really?
And my first thought, being a bit ignorant at times, was, well, hang on a minute, is the education system in the UK that bad? Oh, well, what's next? And moved on to the next person and signed a book and, everybody was happy and so on. But this kept on happening to me. And one day I said to one of the guys, what do you mean you can't read?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, well, I'm really badly dyslexic. And one of the reasons that I'm a motorcyclist is because I don't have to read anything to have great fun with an amazing hobby. And of course, the penny dropped and I felt such an idiot because that thought hadn't slotted into my mind. And this particular guy said to me, I'm so dyslexic that I can't read anything. So that was what started me putting the books into audiobook format, because I thought if these guys are interested enough to stop and stand and talk to me and say they like what's going on, then maybe I should make it for them too. And then it occurred to me that there are an awful lot of people that have a long commute each day. And so if I can make that long commute a bit more interesting, then what a great idea. So Into Africa, they're all out on Audible and iTunes as well. And I did record them in a professional studio.
Yeah, because you narrated them, actually.
I did, and it took me 2 years of knocking on studio doors, asking for to find a studio that would let me narrate them. And they were all saying, well, if you're not a professionally trained narrator and you're not an actor, then no. But then I was in the Ace Cafe in London. And the Ace Cafe, a lot of the tables are bench tables. So you end up sitting next door to strangers. And that's great because they're motorcyclists. And that's always going to make somebody interesting. And you're sitting there having your full English breakfast and nattering away to a stranger. And this one particular visit, the chap sitting next door to me and I were getting on like a house on fire. And he said, after about 10 or 15 minutes of us talking, "You're Sam, aren't you?" And I said, well, yes. And he said, I've just finished reading your book, Into Africa. I thought it's brilliant. Have you ever thought about putting it in audiobook format? And it was one of those moments in life where you have to make a decision. Do I at this stage say, oh, that's really interesting. Thanks very much for the thought.
Yeah.
With 2 years worth of knocking on doors in mind. Or do you just tell a little bit of what's been going on? And I chose the latter. And he gave me this sort of wry grin and said, well, as it happens, I'm the managing director of a recording studio.
Of course.
I mean, luck's just amazing, isn't it?
You can't make it up, man.
No, you can't. Yeah. You can't. Anyway, he invited me to go and record the first chapter in his studio. And he said, if you suck, well, at least you'll know you suck.
Right.
And at the end of it, he said, actually, you can do this. So we recorded that one and then subsequently the other ones.
To get back to the adventures a little bit, before we close out here a little bit, obviously you've it's not like you did this 8-year odyssey and then stopped. You've still continued to travel all over the world and do trips here and there and stuff like that. Is there anywhere that you haven't maybe got a chance to go back to that you would go back like today if you had the chance to like maybe snap your fingers?
Oh, that's hard.
I bet, yeah.
There's one place that I wouldn't want to go back to, and that's jail in Tanzania. That's the whole experience surrounding that episode is still the scariest moment in life. As far as various countries, I'd go back everywhere like a shot.
Yeah.
Everywhere was just fascinating to me, and I'm very conscious that there's an awful lot that I didn't even scrape the surface of, let alone dig into.
Yeah.
Africa's my favorite continent. It's so full of surprises. It is incredibly beautiful. And I love the African sense of humor. It pops its head up all of the time. It's real Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin sort of humor. Simple stuff. Nothing complicated. Sure.
Yeah.
Nothing cruel or nasty towards other people. If something's funny and it looks funny, then people will laugh to the stage that they've got tears rolling down their faces. And I love that freedom of laughter. So Africa's a real mix for me, but any continent, anywhere I've been, I'd love to go back.
I love it. One thing you mentioned, I think it was maybe in the sampler for the South America to North America leg of the journey and the documentation and the stories from there, is that You kind of were more culture shocked by going into back into the developed world as opposed to being in the developing world. Can you talk a little bit about that? What that culture shock was kind of like, and maybe what the biggest difference was, or some of the biggest differences that you experienced?
So by the time I was at that stage,
Hmm.
I'd spent most of the time in developing world countries.
Right.
And the priorities in developing world countries and developed world countries start off as being exactly the same.
Okay.
So, roof overhead, food in stomach,
Hmm.
clothing, education for the kids, medical care, um, something stashed away for old age, if at all possible, and if your culture allows it, a beer on a Friday night.
There
So
we go.
they start off to be very, very similar. But in
Hmm.
developing world countries, people have there's a simplicity about life because there's an awful lot that people can't have. And I found that laughter came faster in developing world countries, and people seem to appreciate each other
Hmm.
a lot quicker. I found it quite fascinating when I met somebody for the first time, and it is the handshake and the smile, and then just to watch the person's face actually take in who you are
Interesting.
and very quickly form an opinion of whether they want to spend time with you or not. And in developed world countries, I don't find that anything like as much. People tend to take you as much more at face value, and to move on that much more quickly. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like there's a depth maybe in the developed the developing world, that people kind of size you up, and maybe because the pace, it sounds like it's a little bit slower of life rather than everybody in the U.S. or the U.K. or any other developed country trying to go 100,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I fall into it when I get home too.
Oh,
Um,
really?
well, the cost of living is so much more when you're in a developed world country. You've
Hmm.
got to work that much faster all of the time to be able to meet the demands of the cost of living. Whereas you're traveling through a developing world country, and yeah, sure, you still got to fight to put food on the table.
Hmm.
Africa, for example, people say, well, Africans, they're only hands out for aid agency money. But what people don't realize is that, for example, vast swathes of Africa is subject to the tsetse fly. And the tsetse
Hmm.
fly is sleeping sickness, and many animals just don't survive, particularly, working animals like oxen and that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
people farm um, what they can by hand because they don't have an option. And that means that they can earn enough to feed their family, and they can produce enough to sell a little bit to neighbors or in the market and that sort of thing. But you suddenly get a major drought or a major set of floods, and everything gets just wiped out.
Sure.
And that living on the edge is it's really, really hard. It's a different type of living on the edge. But yeah, living in the first world, oh, it's a challenge, isn't it? Just
Yeah, yeah, it has its own challenges, and I think it kind of makes you think about putting your own problems into perspective, right? Because you kind of get lost in like, oh, I got to worry about this, I got to deal with this, there's this, right? And then it's like, well, I have a roof over my head, I have food on the table and in the fridge, I have not one, not two, but three motorcycles in the garage. Like, you got it pretty good. It makes you kind of appreciate what you have, and it almost sounds like that even people who don't have a lot, they appreciate what they have, and more importantly, who they're around and who they're spending their time with.
yeah, I think that sums it up very nicely. And I think in developed world countries, we spend an awful lot of time being told that we're not good enough if we don't have this and we don't have that.
Hmm.
And actually, most of that stuff we just don't need. What we need is the time with our friends and our families and the opportunity to smile and laugh.
Mm, yeah. So kind of my last question, because I mean, like we could do this for hours,
We could.
obviously, and so I'm hoping you'll come onto the show again, and we can kind of dig in a little bit more, of some philosophies, and just dive into your trips a little bit more and stuff. But after all your travels and stuff, I think people that maybe haven't traveled so much think the world is huge, right? And it's just this immensely huge place, and all that, and it is. But then you meet people who maybe travel a lot, and they and especially as time has gone on and technology has made it easier to travel, people say the world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So do you think the world is like a huge place, or because you've traveled so much and seen so many different things, or is it smaller because you've kind of seen and done everything? Like what's your take on that?
Stay on the main roads and it's small. Take the time to get off the beaten track, to go on the back roads, to where time has been standing still, and don't go in straight lines, go in as many zigzags as you possibly can, and that's where you find the real value of being alive.
I love it. I knew there would be a great answer to that. Even though the question was not proposed the best, but I appreciate you summing it up real well. I think that's a great note to end on. So Sam, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us. And like I said, we just scratched the surface, so we have to have you on again.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, same. Before we do set off, though, where can people pick up the books, the audio books, learn more about you? Tell me everything.
The best place to get the paperbacks from is from Amazon, because I'm not based in the States, so I'm not sending out so many. Cost of postage is ridiculous now. So from Amazon is the best place in the US. And the audiobooks from Audible, Spotify, and from iTunes. The books are all out in Kindle format as well. So that's fairly general. If you want to keep in touch, then I've got 2 Facebook pages. You'll find me if you plonk my name in, because it's fairly unusual, so it comes up fairly quickly. I'm also on Instagram and Blue Sky. And my website, if anybody fancies a little bit of a deeper delve into what I get up to, that's my first name, so Sam, and then hyphen or dash Manicom, which is MANICOM.com. And if anybody wants to link up with me at a presentation or so on, then that's where they're going to find out where I'm going to be next, because there's a page with those listed.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you like where's the next trip is or whatever, but between recording time and when it comes out, or the next time we chat, you'll probably have been to like half a dozen other places. So we'll have to just catch up after that. So anyway, Sam, thank you for being here, and I can't wait to do this again.
Nice one. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts too. If you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure, email us hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC. Made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long. We'll see you out there.